Moving on this week, Chinese President Hu Jintao will be visiting Washington. He'll be receiving a full state dinner from the Obamas. But in a very rare move ahead of the visit, the Chinese leader gave written answers to questions submitted by the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. And the questions he chose to answer, I think, give us a pretty good preview of what Hu's willing to discuss, as well as what message he's bringing to the U.S., while calling for common ground, saying that both countries stand to gain from a sound relationship versus one of confrontation. Hu then hit directly at the dollar. He called the current international currency system, dominated by the dollar, a product of the past. He highlighted China's aim to turn the yuan into a global currency. And he offered criticism for the Fed's recent move of quantitative easing, too, saying that U.S. monetary policy has a major impact on global liquidity and capital flows, and that therefore the liquidity of the dollar should be kept at a reasonable and stable level. Now, these sentiments come as no surprise, but the real question is, during this visit, who's going to have the upper hand? Joining me to discuss it is Edward Harrison, founder of the blog Credit Write-Downs. Edward, thanks so much for being on the show.
Good to be here.
Now, this is very rare. Hu Jintao is not one that's known to be friendly with the media, especially not foreign media organizations. So, you know, to me, he sounds very confident here. Do you think that he's trying to send a distinct message before he comes here?
I think that he's not necessarily confident. It's more he's sending the message that you're talking about, and that is that
with a confident tone, perhaps.
The United States is the currency manipulator. We're not the currency manipulators. That's basically what he's saying. He's trying to say that, in fact, the currency that, you know, the stability of the currency has nothing to do with anything. It's really the United States, with the fact that they're engaging in quantitative easing. They are the bad guy, not us.
Yeah, but everybody's pointing fingers, right? Because the U.S. Is doing exactly the opposite. They're pointing their finger at China and calling them the currency manipulator. So, I mean, does this meeting really have any chance for success, any chance to go somewhere? Can we ever see eye to eye, or is it always going to be blame the other guy?
Well, the good thing is that the economy in the United States in particular is on an upswing. With the Republicans now in Congress, people are much less, and with the economy doing much better, people are much less concerned about the currency issue. It's still an issue. So it gives Hu the opportunity to go out there and be somewhat flamboyant with his language. But at the same time, when he's meeting with the president, he can say, look, you know, I don't think that the currency is going to go anywhere in the near future. The current status quo, over time, 10, 15, 20 years, we'll see something. But, you know, clearly we want our currency to play a larger and stronger role in that.
But I'm not so sure about that, because already this morning, you know, we got news from several senators, including Chuck Schumer, who are saying that there still is the political will to pass legislation, you know, to make sure that they really do clamp down on China when it comes to their currency manipulation, or the way that the U.S. sees it. So, I mean, is it really even up to Obama, or could this Congress really go for it? If today, before the visit, we're already hearing this kind of push?
Well, I think that you will hear that from Schumer. Schumer's one of the congressmen or the senators who's going to say that, because he's been at the forefront of that movement. But all of the incoming leaders, Eric Cantor, you know, the incoming Speaker of the House, John Boehner, they've all said pretty much, we're not really that interested in becoming protectionist with China on this particular issue.
Now let's talk about what Hu Jintao said about the currency system. He said that it is a product of the past. Is he right? I mean, is this the thing that nobody in America really wants to admit, that we don't have too long left with our dollar being the reserve currency around the world? I
think he's definitely right. The dollar, you know, you have the problem is that if the dollar is the reserve currency, everyone wants to have dollar reserves. In order for everyone to have dollar reserves, the United States has to run a current account deficit. And right now, everyone's talking about the fact that the United States is running in a massive current account deficit. That's an unsustainable thing over the long term, to run large current account deficits. So eventually, it's going to lead to unsustainable debt accumulation and a collapse of the American economy. My personal view is that it's going to be replaced at some point in time, whether through crisis or through some sort of, you know, easing into a new system.
But replaced by whom? Because even Hu acknowledged that, yes, they would like one day for the yuan to be, you know, the international reserve currency, but that they're still far away from that happening. So
definitely.
At the moment, I mean, is there something else to replace the dollar?
And there's not, and that's the real problem. The real problem is there's nothing to replace it in the immediate future. Gold's not going to replace it. The euro certainly isn't going to replace it because we know the sort of problems that they're having in Europe right now. And the Chinese are certainly not ready to replace it. So there's nothing there waiting in the wings. If we have some sort of systemic crisis where the dollar suddenly becomes unstable, then we're in a big problem.
But is China slowly gaining the upper hand in this relationship? For the moment, yes, they're only the second largest economy in the world. We're still number one. But how long until really until they overtake us? How long even until their GDP becomes higher than ours? I mean, it could only be years, right?
Well, I don't necessarily look at it as, I think it could be a symbiotic relationship if done the right way. Really, you have to look at it from, how can we gain and they gain at the same time. Just because we get rid of the reserve currency doesn't mean that we're necessarily losing. In fact, I think we would gain because we would ditch the constant need to accumulate dollars by, for instance, all of the Asian central banks.
But then we ditch the prestige, the entire idea, right? The dollar is the currency of the world.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Well, we'll see, what the tone is like once Hu Jintao gets here, and maybe all of this will be behind closed doors, but maybe we'll get into a little bit of the conversation too. Thanks so much, Edward.
Thank you. I appreciate it.